Good afternoon. My name is Amy and I use she, her. And I am the Caregiver Wellness Coordinator at the Scarborough Center for Healthy Communities. I'm happy to have you join us today for Tech Tools for Caregivers. Today's presentation is being offered as part of the scope of services offered by the Caregiver Wellness team. Our goal is to support caregivers wherever they are on their caregiving journey. Our services include social work supported counseling, group programs, group support, education on various caregiving and health related topics. If you have more questions about our services, I'd be happy to answer them at the end of today's presentation. So for those of you who aren't aware of what the Scarborough Center for Healthy Communities are, I'm going to take a brief moment to introduce it before we dive into our topic today. So SCHC, the much shorter acronym that I'll be using going forward, started in 1977. And so it's been around for quite a while and has a goal to be client-centered and to act as a leader in the community to support individuals' holistic health. We strive to meet our values that are on screen now in our fabulous acronym of I-CARE. All once again to be seen as a leader in community health and wellness programs. And I hope that those values and missions come forward in today's presentation. To start off, I do want to make sure that we know that this is a safe space, and I want everyone to feel comfortable. To ensure this, I want to lay out a few ground rules. First off, everyone's opinions, questions, and thoughts will be respected here. I'm happy to hear any thoughts, comments, or questions that come forward. I will ask that we respect the time of everyone in attendance, but making sure that we know that all voices are valued. We also encourage you to use I feel statements when making statements, especially if it's in response to another's. Again, just valuing that each individual has their own opinion, and that if we are speaking near when someone else is speaking, we give them time to finish their thoughts. As mentioned, the recording will capture the content of today, but any questions, comments, or thoughts shared from participants will not be recorded or will be edited out of the recording. I do also ask that we be present today as much as we can be, and I hope that you do participate when I do call on that. Is there anything else people would like to see as far as group guidelines to make sure that they feel comfortable today? You can type that into the chat, or you can let me know by unmuting yourself now. All right, seeing and hearing none, I will get started with today. So today, technology for caregivers. It is a big topic, and both caregiving and technology are broad. And so for today's presentation, I will be referring to the term caregiver as a person, so a family member or friend who is providing ongoing and unpaid support to individuals who are living with a disability, age-related, or chronic health conditions. And so the majority of the support listed today will be for individuals who are caring for someone over the age of 18, although it will still apply in certain situations to anyone of any age. And in today's topic, there's lots of little bubbles there because we're going to touch on a fair number of points. And there's going to be a lot of options presented. So I ask that you stay open-minded in hearing them. And some of them they might hit and you're like, nope, that bubble has popped or floated away, and I don't think that's going to be relevant to me. And if there's duds, you can let them pass, but there might be some that seem relevant, and they might not be relevant now, but they could be something to tuck away and bring out later on your caregiving journey. We will also be asking or encouraging people to share their own experiences if you used any of the things referenced today. I do also want to highlight that a lot of the products and services that I mentioned today do come with a fee. The Scarborough Center for Healthy Communities is not endorsing any specific product. Today's content is for information purposes. And we ask that if you are considering the purchase of any of these products, that you consider what your goals are and what is a reasonable budget for you. And so with that, technology. I'm going to launch a poll to get a bit of a sense about where we are today. And so on the screen in a moment, you should see a poll asking you how important technology is to you. And you can respond with not very important, somewhat important, or very important. So we've got lots of responses coming in. Great. I appreciate that participation. All right, wonderful. I think most people have responded. And looking at our results, almost everyone is very important. And I'm happy to sort of see that we're all recognizing the value that technology has in our lives. I think the past 2 years have done nothing but to show us how important technology can be to pretty much every aspect of our life. And so I've got another poll. And so this one is, how comfortable are we with technology? And so once again, you have your options. These are anonymous, but not very comfortable, somewhat comfortable, and very comfortable. All right, I'm going to give it a few more seconds on our current poll. All right. So it looks like we are in the somewhat comfortable range. We have some people that are very comfortable and some people that are not very comfortable. And I think it's important to recognize that technology and using technology can feel really daunting. And so for those that are less comfortable, I'm really glad you're here. And I hope that means that you're coming forward with a student mindset. And you might recognize that some of these might be a little bit complicated sounding, but you're curious enough to see if they can bring value to you and if they're worth finding out. And we know that as caregivers, there's a lot going on. And when thinking about technology, I want it to be a tool. So if something comes up and it sounds like that would be too much work for you, you don't have to try that one. But if there's something that you sounds like it would connect with you, then you should be able to try to implement that to help your caregiving journey and to use that as something in your back pocket. And so I'm going to start today off and we're going to talk about different types of technology. So we're going to start off with some lower tech options. So hopefully that will warm us all up to the topic. All right, so our lower tech options. And so some of these are off the shelf products that you can just plug in, put the batteries in and implement. And some of them are off the shelf products that you might not have originally thought of for caregiving, but can really help with that role. And so our first one, and these are going to be, the first couple ones are going to be things that can make it easier for the individual you're caring for. And so our first one is a robotic companion. And this might be something that some of you have heard about before, or maybe not, maybe it's completely new. And so I have for you today, my friend, and this is the dog version, the cat is on the screen. But when I turn my dog friend on, he will respond. And it responds to the touch of whomever is sort of supporting or carrying them. And they will walk around a little bit. The dogs will walk around, the cats will not. But they provide a level of interaction. And this can be stimulating. I'm sure we can all imagine or have experiences with animals and felt that sense of satisfaction that can come with taking care of an animal. And this is one way of having that level of satisfaction and stimulation just without the litter box. There's quite a lot of research that has gone into the use of companion robots, whether that is a dog, cat, or seal. And I'm just gonna, it does also bark. It can be put to a mute setting though, so it doesn't always bark. And these, again, they're very well researched to be able to provide a level of stimulation and interaction for individuals. And this can allow someone to, again, have that sort of sense of purpose and meaning with the safety of knowing that it isn't something that is going to be neglected or have a consequence if it isn't sort of cared for or seen. The biggest concern there would just be that the batteries die. And for all of the products I list today, you can see there's links at the bottom of the slides. I will send out a full product list. So if there is something that you're interested in, you will get the link that lets you know a little bit more about that product and where you can find it. So these specific pets from the Joy for All website, they do cost about $124. And so they're not the cheapest thing to go for, but there have been quite a lot of positive experiences that I've seen both in research and anecdotally. And so I'm going to take the doggy down. But if there's any questions about how this product works, again, you can put those in the chat. And so there's other products that can help to make technology a little bit easier. And this might be something that we can think of that we might want for ourselves. And so the example that you see on screen is considered a more user-friendly remote. And this is a sample of a technology that is supposed to help to promote independence by creating a easier way to interact with an existing tool. So if your loved one maybe wants to enjoy being able to watch TV and do that activity independently, but if anyone's seen what remotes look like nowadays, they can get a little bit frustrating and they might be a little bit overwhelming. And so this, it's called the Flipper, has a simplified sort of interface where it has the volume and the channels and a really big on-off button. It does allow to sync, and you can unslide it in there. You can see all the different buttons. And so it does have the majority of the functionalities that a full remote would have. But again, it just allows for that easier user experience. And sometimes this is how we can make technology that little bit more accessible. Our third low-tech option that we have on the slide here is our day clocks. And so this is our big one that says it is Friday morning at 11:30 a.m. with the date and the year. These products come in a variety of sizes, and you can usually change the screen to choose what information you're going to present. But tools like this can help someone to orient. And if your loved one is someone that tends to get anxious or is repeatedly asking questions about what day it is or what's coming up today, having a tool like this that they can easily reference independently can be something to, again, put in your back pocket to help to simplify or make something more accessible, because sometimes watches can become complicated to look at. And so having big, bold text that gives the information that that person needs as a clear visual. There's also different versions that look more analog. So you can sort of just look up day clocks. And again, you'll get the link for where this one is, but being able to sort of pull some ideas. If there's any thoughts or questions about any of the products on our low tech options, I'd be happy to hear those now. All right, so as we move along, not to say they're going to get more complicated, but some of them will be different types. And so one of the biggest things that we know can be challenging for caregivers is communication. So maintaining communication with your loved one can help to promote independence and well-being. And so we have two options posted on screen now. And so one is our sort of our picture phone. And this is a phone where you can have a visual reference. And so this can sometimes make it easier for someone to have a conversation. While they don't see that person, it can sometimes be harder to sort of maintain focus or be able to sort of engage and remember who they're talking to. And so being able to see who they're talking to with that little picture can provide that reference. And it also makes just dialing that person easier because it's just the press of a button. The majority of these phones also allow for increased amplification if hearing loss is a challenge. That being said, the other image here is a pocket talker. And so this is easier than hearing aids because they're worn over the ears like headphones rather than having to be put in the ears or be fiddled with and require quite a lot of dexterity. And they don't have to be as stimulating. For some people, wearing hearing aids can be an overstimulation, having something in your ears. And so this is something that can be worn over the ears, and it works really well in small spaces or one-on-one conversations. And we have someone in the checking out the website, the prices are reasonable. And so yeah, the Canadian Hearing Society, if you notice that hearing is something that is a challenge for your loved one, I would recommend meeting with the Canadian Hearing Society. They do have counselors, and when you meet with them, they can help to better explain the products and also sometimes find you grants or different funding avenues to access these products. So this is one example of hopefully showing that technology doesn't have to be super complicated, but there are different tools and strategies that are easier to implement that can help to really support your loved one to maintain independence and also ideally maintain their well-being by being able to maintain those relationships with others. While not pictured on screen, utilizing talk-to-text programming on different smart devices can also provide a way to help someone engage with technology without having to either press the very tiny buttons or follow through with navigating through on a smart device. So we might be familiar with Hey Siri or Hey Google. And that's one example of talk to text, where we can say out loud what we're searching for and it will type it out. Talk to text software is available on most smart devices for sending messages. And so someone can say out what they would like to send and have that sent in a text message or in an email, and have all of that facilitated by the, I'm going to say, electronic assistant, to broadly categorize Siri and Google and sort of other smart AI tools that utilize that, to allow, again, that just because someone might be in need of support doesn't mean they can't use different tools, as long as we can adapt them to meet them where they are. If you're interested in learning about talk to text on your specific devices, I'd recommend contacting or looking up on the website of your individual device the accessibility features, or just going into the settings feature of your phone and finding out what accessibility features they offer there. Sorry, were there any comments or questions about the communication tools, or if anyone's been able to find a communication tool that's worked really well for you in your caregiving journey? I'd love to hear those now. All right, so our next point is on communication for you as a caregiver, and more specifically, communications with you as a caregiver with others within that circle of care. As we often know, caregiving ideally shouldn't be done in isolation, and that you should have that team of people around you to support. Coordinating a team can be complicated. And so utilizing different tools, and these are just various apps that can help support communications within a circle of care. And so I'm going to stop my screen and share an example of one of these tools. So hopefully we can see that now. And so this is an example of the app called Caring Village. So it's one of the app icons that you see on screen. And while there's a couple different options listed there, a lot of them have similar features that you can utilize to help support you and your caregiving team. So within this specific app, it has many different features that can help to sort of keep track of your loved one's care needs. It can help with scheduling. It can help sort of clarify what needs to be done and have those specific roles assigned to different people. So saying, I will do that specific task, and so it's clear what tasks still need to be done and who is doing which tasks. We know that this can help in different family situations if there's a sense that, certain people are always taking on certain types of tasks, to help to clarify and be more transparent about what needs to be done and who is doing that. All of these are usually very customizable, and sometimes you want to find a couple different types to see which one works best for you and your team, but this is free. I'm just going to go to the menus tab here that shows you all the different features within this. So they've got private messaging, you can do different medication reminders, all of which you can utilize and make use of, and you can include care providers. You can include care providers, so if a PSW is comfortable being added to this care team, or if a physician is comfortable being added to this care team, that's something you can talk about with everyone who's in that care team to see if this is a system that can work for them. And so the name of that specific app is called Care Village. And so that, I'll bring up my slide. So that one is Care Village. So this is what the logo of that one looks like. And there's the link for it on the side now. Care Lotus or Care Lotus Helping Hands is another version of that. Most of these also do have web platforms. So if you know someone that wants to be part of that circle of care, but as we found out, isn't the most comfortable with technology, they can also often access them on a web browser rather than just an app. And so, just looking in the chat. And so again, these are different ways, and that is, I would say, a little bit more of a higher tech and involved sort of option. But again, that, especially if you've got care partners that are on different time zones or just different schedules in life, something like that can really help with that transparency to make sure that things don't fall through the cracks and to make sure things don't fall on just one individual's shoulders. There can also be some sort of other app options. So the other big icon here, this big blue one, this is our medication reminder. So this is the MediSafe app. If your loved one has a complex medication regime, a dedicated app for medication reminders can be really helpful. This can also be helpful if you're going to healthcare appointments to be able to have that clear list of what medication is being taken and to be able to say, okay, when is this medication supposed to be taken? These are the other medications that my loved one is on, to make sure that there isn't any drug interactions and that it's very clear which ones should be taken together and when. If the idea of joining yet another app, again, is the most helpful, we can also just set up reminders in our phone, going sort of back to basics in how we utilize technology. Pretty much every phone nowadays, whether it's an iPhone or an Android, will have the capacity to do reminders. And you can have it set to do reminders at specific times of day. And this can be one way to help support your loved one's independence if you set a reminder up on their phone and then they're able to see that. And for some people, seeing a reminder on their phone is enough to help them accomplish that task. For other people, we'll talk about some other options that are a little bit more engaging. These are just, again, other ways that we can help to leverage technology to make things a little bit easier. All of the apps that I listed here today are free, and they have various different features. So again, you can always find what works for you and play around with some of the settings, see what's going to work, and make sure that everyone is on board when we start to implement things. Are there any thoughts, comments, or questions about any of the apps listed here?
I think so. But my question is, this medication, this reminder medication had a sound, a buzz, or alarm? But the other question is, the doctors sometimes every month change the medication for another, you know?
And so the first question there, they usually, all those apps allow you to adjust sort of what exactly you want it to do. If you want it to buzz at you, if you want it to beep at you. Some of them are quite handy. They allow you to snooze it. If you're like, okay, I'm busy right now, I can't get to that one, but then it'll remind you again in 5 minutes to make sure that you do try to get that medication within that recommended time frame. And just, there was a comment in the chat about, there's also a machine that beeps and called Live Find. And I don't know about that one, but I did have this backup slide of just other random things. There are machines that will beep at you and specifically open the capsules or the appropriate section to show the pills at that specific time. These machines can be helpful. They are quite expensive. So I would recommend trying to implement using an app system. Because these are, okay, so that is what you were thinking about. These ones can be close to $500, which obviously is quite a price tag, but if the medication regime is complicated, this can sometimes be easier to sit down, load it up ahead of time, and then be able to have it beep and dispense and have sort of that indicator, and you're like, okay, there we go. That is what we need and when we need it. And so the brand for this one is called ePill. And again, the link is on the slide there and will be in the product list. But it sounds like there is another brand called Live Find. So there's lots of options for these various tools. And so you can also do some research. I'm presenting you with some. And hopefully that can be either a launching point to utilize those ones or to find some other things that you might be interested in. But that was a great question. You can customize that to be as sort of alerting, whether that's a buzz, a beep, a noise, or less alerting based on your comfort level. If your loved one gets overstimulated by a bunch of beeping and buzzing, then you can always adapt that. So question about the apps. Can these apps be downloaded to a desktop computer? So as I mentioned with the Care Village and the Lotus Helping Hands, those ones often do have desktop browsers that you can log in, and you wouldn't need an app for that one. You would just log into their website. I believe MediSafe also has a website that you can utilize. That one I won't quote myself on because I don't know the full answer. But most of them do have web browsers that you can interact with, so you can use them on a computer. Great question, thank you. That actually kind of segues us into sort of websites. And just before I move on to this page, The brand that the other individual mentioned for medication reminders is only $100 on Amazon. So again, you look around, find what works for you. So on the topic though of utilizing computers and various online tools, I'm just going to highlight a few websites that can be really great to help support you as a caregiver with various aspects. So if you're interested in learning more, and we know that learning is one of the best things that we can do as a caregiver, arming ourselves with knowledge to help to approach the uncertainty that caregiving can bring. One resource that is highly recommended for that is the Ontario Caregiving Organization. And a nice feature with the Ontario Caregiving Organization is they do have a 24/7 hotline, and that phone number is listed on the slide now, that you can call and get connected to someone and speak to them live to help with a specific concern or question that you have. This is not a crisis line, but it can help to connect you with someone who understands your situation and can offer specific or guided support. We also recommend connecting with other caregivers. If you aren't able to access a support group in your area, Facebook has a lot of them. And so if you're comfortable being on Facebook, you can look up caregivers in your area, and you can often find groups of caregivers. Sometimes they're groups of caregivers for specific conditions. And sometimes they're not area specific, but they can connect you in the way that the internet does to erase boundaries with other individuals who are going through a similar journey. And hearing their stories or learning lessons that they've shared can help you feel less alone and more connected to others, and just connect with someone who empathizes, maybe is feeling the way you're feeling. Jamie, did you have a question? Oh, no, the hand went down. And so again, all of these websites will be sent out to you guys afterwards. I have a very long slide that just has a bunch of links on it to be able to make sure that if you are following up on any of these, you have that access. And the Facebook groups, again, just look up, consider looking up the condition that you're supporting, or just looking up the term caregiver and search for groups. And that can be one way to, again, just find that social support if you aren't able to connect with an in-person social support group. If you do have the option, I do highly support support groups if they're in person or on Zoom is a great way. And I'm sure people who are in support groups can probably testify to that. But I'm going digital today, so that's why that one came out. Other places you can find online support is the Canadian government. So the link here links to caregivers credits and benefits that can help to provide either financial support or occupational support for you as a caregiver, and helps to break down some of the options of how much you can claim for the Canadian caregiver tax benefit, or what you're entitled to as far as workplace protection, and the different scenarios within caregiving if you have to take a leave of absence for a long period of time, or if it's for an acute caregiving bout. Navigating through all of the pages within that can be difficult, so I've isolated the best link that I have found to help to present those things that might be relevant to you as a caregiver. And I've got another demo here. So if you've heard about the SCHC Healthline, then you know why I'm recommending it. If you haven't heard about it, this is the Central East Healthline. There is also a Healthline for all of the other LHINs. I'm aware the LHINs don't exist, but the local health integration networks, but their websites still do. And this is a fantastic resource to identify a specific type of service or need. So you can search based on your area. So I'm currently located in South Scarborough. And I'm looking for support for seniors. I'm specifically looking for osteoporosis support, and I can find different clinics or different providers that might meet that need. But you can search just about anything, and you can find relevant services in your area for conditions that you're interested in. And I would say this is a much better approach than just starting to Google services or products in your area. It provides a little bit more of a vetted list that provides all of the information right there. So we're not scrolling through a bunch of websites. We're able to find things a little bit more efficiently, and you're able to view the various options. So if I'm looking for falls prevention programs, I can find ones that are located specifically in South Scarborough, located outside of South Scarborough, but serves the South Scarborough area. And at that point, I could then maybe click on the services that I'm interested in and get all of their information right at my fingertips, rather than having to scroll through all the different websites. Are there any questions or thoughts about any of the websites that I just presented? And again, you will get all of these links, so I'd encourage you to go around and poke at them yourself and see if they might be able to bring some value to you as a caregiver. And so our next topic is monitoring. And this is something that can sometimes be sensitive as a caregiver, and it can be an important conversation to have with yourself, with your loved ones, and with those in the circle of care. I'm sorry, our eyes are already tired. Hopefully you can just listen and still engage. And so when we think about implementing monitoring, it is a very fine balance between respecting your loved one's sort of personal space and privacy, as well as ensuring their safety and making sure that everyone involved in the situation feels comfortable. Some people, we don't want to infringe on someone's privacy, and we also don't want to create a false sense of security. And so the goal of these systems is to allow someone to be independent while ensuring that their safety isn't jeopardized. Like with many other products, cost can play a role into the equation, with some having subscription fees or high upfront costs. And so we're going to go through a couple different types or versions of monitoring that can be helpful at different stages of the caregiving journey and can help to hopefully connect with individuals who have varying levels of comfort with the concept of monitoring. All right, so we're going to start with what we considered sensors. And so this is sort of a way to monitor without having quote unquote eyes involved. So some of these are great if your loved one lives with you. Some of these are great if your loved one lives independently. And all of these are just helpful ways to help to ensure that someone's space stays safe. And so our bottom right corner, I think it's your bottom right corner, these are just door chimes. And these might be something that are automatically included if you have a home safety kit with Rogers or Bell or another sort of home security system. But you can also install them independently. This sample is from, I believe, Home Depot, and it costs about $30. And many day programs utilize these, as it just helps to give you an awareness of when certain doors are being opened and closed. So this can be helpful. Maybe you put it on the front door, just so you know if someone's opening the front door and maybe they're doing it at a time when you're not expecting that, especially if your loved one might be at risk for wandering, then that can sort of give you that heads up and that awareness. So we might not have to be sort of having those constant eyes. We have that sense of awareness with an auditory signal. You can also put it on other doors in the house to help to give you a cue as far as someone went into the bathroom half an hour ago and I haven't heard the chime for them to come out. In a similar mind, we have a bed sensor. And so that is in the top corner there. And you can also get chair sensors that are just smaller, but they are both pressure pads. And so these can give you either auditory or visual alerts if someone moves. So if there is a shift in pressure, and that can be helpful if your loved one is at risk of falling and you want to be able to be aware of when they might be leaving the bed or leaving the chair. And so some of these options have cords, some of them are cordless. And again, they have various sizes. The chair pad that I found on Walmart's website was $250, so they can have a bit of a higher upfront cost, but that could be something that might be well worth it. It is important to your situation. It can sometimes help caregivers just have that sense of they get that cue. They don't have to, maybe we've asked our loved one, like, hey, just like let me know when you're getting up, and maybe that we don't get that heads up. And so this is one way to find other ways to get that heads up. Our third example here is a water sensor. And so this can help to detect leaks or sudden temperature changes. And some of them can even implement an emergency water shutoff if that happens. This specific one is attached to an app. And at this point, most of them are attached to an app to give you that alert of when there's been that change. This is also something that can just be helpful if you are a person that leaves your home for a couple, for weeks or months at a time, to be able to have that safety of like, okay, if something were to go wrong with the water, I would have that heads up almost instantly. And again, this just can help to support someone's independence. So, and depending on where you put it, it can be, okay, someone has left the bath water running and it is now overflowing. Or sometimes it is a burst pipe. You know your loved one and you can see how it might potentially apply to different situations and serve in different roles. A lot of people do find they like the sensor option because it feels like they're allowing a little bit more independence. And so this could be for a senior who's living independently or an adult living with a disability that wants to sort of have that independence, but there are certain features that you might want to be able to have that awareness of. And so this is a version that's a little bit more involved. And so this is a specific product from a Canadian company called Home Accept. And what they have is they have different sensors. And so that's the white thing you see on the stove there. And their sensor system utilizes artificial intelligence to learn patterns of your loved one. So it gets the pattern of when the shower gets turned on, when the lights get turned on, when the stove gets turned on, and it can help to learn your loved one's normal routine. And then based on that, it can help to better understand if something's gone outside of that routine, and it can alert individuals listed within that category if that has happened. And these allow for a level of sensing without, again, having those quote unquote eyes. And I believe the sensors can detect temperature change, movement. So sometimes they just pop them inside the fridge door. And so they know that if so-and-so hasn't opened the fridge door by 10 a.m., then that would be considered a red flag. And that could trigger a text being sent to a caregiver so that it can trigger just that phone call of, hey, Mom, how are we doing today? Or hey, Susie, like just checking in, how is the day going, to find out if that person maybe hasn't gotten up yet or if there's other issues that are of concern. This one would have a subscription fee, and there are different versions of this. There isn't as many versions offered in Canada. This was the best one that I found in Canada. But again, I encourage you to do some research. We're going to talk a little bit about wearables now. And so this would sometimes be considered a step up in the monitoring if this is a device that your loved one has on their person. And sometimes when we think of devices, we think of watches, but there are other options. And wearables have different benefits. So it can help to provide, especially the ones that are getting more advanced, it can help provide geolocation, biometric data, and some of them have a level of false detection. There are some known challenges with them. It can be difficult to charge them. We know that there are issues with user error, and again, some of them have subscription fees. And so the idea of tracking a loved one, again, can sit differently with everyone, but it gives you additional information about where that loved one is and can help support their independence by adding sort of a level of a safety net. And so starting with kind of the easier way to see wearables, I'm going to share my phone screen again. All right, and so one of the easiest ways to implement a tracking is in Google Maps. So in Google Maps, you can do what's called sharing your location. So if you have a loved one that always has their phone on them and is consistently charging their phone, we might not need additional tools or software or devices. We can just ensure that locations are being shared on our phones. And if you have a Google account, you can utilize this feature. And so I'm scrolling out. Today I'm in the office, so I have my little work icon. But if you see there's a little face. And that little face indicates someone that has shared their location with me, and I can see where they are. This is also a really helpful feature if you need to meet up with someone, or if you're going to meet up with someone, you can see them driving along the highway or wherever they might be. So again, just showing sort of one of those easier to access options to start off the idea and concept in a way that hopefully makes sense and can feel relatable. Starting with that, you can also progress into specific GPS watches. The image on screen now does show an Apple device. One Apple feature that, before we just jump into watches, that some people do like is using Apple tags. If you have an Apple device, you might be aware of these. But an Apple tag will just again show you that geolocation of wherever that tag is. So that could be something that you attach to someone's keychain. You can use devices like the Tile apps that are supposed to help you put them on your keys or your wallet. That's supposed to help you. Those ones do tend to have a shorter range, so they can be helpful usually within, I think, a 250 foot radius to find things, but Apple tags offer the broadest geographic coverage. But again, starting simple can make things a little bit more easier to implement, and then you can always progress up. If you're utilizing a watch, that's where you get a few more features with those biometric data. So that could be for heart rate. They do, again, are starting to have more falls detection. It should be known that that isn't always 100%. And so it's important to have other ways to ensure that if someone were to experience a fall, that there are safety features put in place. I promise I'm not completely biased to Apple, but Apple Watches are one of the ones that have a little bit more of the advanced features right now. I have no doubt that other brands will start to have those being offered. But within Apple Watches, you can also sync the watch data to a different Apple device or within the app on an Android device. And that way you can sort of have more constant eyes on that biometric data of your loved one to just be able to see, hey, are they getting a lot of steps, or is there a specific period where they're very sedentary? And that's something we want to maybe try to implement some changes around. These do come with some higher price tags. They cost between $300 and $500. And watches or wearables can sometimes be a little bit complicated for individuals based on their level of cognition, especially if it's not something someone is used to using, especially the concept of having to charge a watch. If that's not something someone is familiar with, we don't recommend trying to implement tools that might frustrate your loved one. But if this is something that they can implement within their routine, or they have the support to be able to utilize, then it can be something that can, again, provide that extra information and provide that safety net. And so our question was, I imagine they are all waterproof. The majority of them are waterproof to the Apple Watch, I believe, is 50 feet. So they can be submerged. You can wear them in the shower. Don't shower with your phone. But Apple tags are waterproof. Or even like the little tile tags that go on keys are also waterproof. And so our next step is, again, a little bit of a higher step up. And so this is, I really like turtles. So that is your little image of turtles. And I like that sort of concept just because when we're at home, we want to feel safe. And we often do feel safest when we're at home, and we want our loved ones to feel that too. But we also know that the majority of falls that occur in the elderly in Canada occur in the home. I think it's about 1/3 of falls occur in the home, and then a second third occurs just outside of the home. And so there's different types of features that can help provide that added level of security to make sure that when someone's in their home, they have that degree of safety. And so these are things, they're called personal emergency response systems, or PERS. And some of us may already have an idea of what this is. The very popular commercial of "Help, I've fallen and can't get up." And that was from Silver Cross Healthline, I believe. But it's a similar concept, but they have gotten a little bit better. So sometimes there are watches or there are pendants that are worn around the neck. And within those devices, there is a call button. So if someone were to experience a fall, they have that on them. They're also now embedded with accelerometers so that they can, in theory, detect that fall. And then usually there's a home hub that will then call and say, hey, we've detected, we think that a fall may have occurred. Can you confirm that you're all right? And if they don't get a response, there are different systems that can be put in place, whether that's contacting you as a caregiver or contacting emergency services. And so there's a couple different types of personal emergency systems on screen now. The majority of ones that have pendants or watches, those are also waterproof, just to the comment that was made earlier. Again, with those, it is important to implement them in a way that the person can feel comfortable using them. So sometimes watches just feel more natural to people, but sometimes a pendant is just the easiest thing to sort of obviously be there. There is an element that sometimes there can be user error of, I'm just going to press this button. But again, it can provide sort of a level of safety and can coordinate who gets that call if that button is pressed. So the prices that are listed on the slide now are for, I would say, the more advanced versions of these. So within these ones, they offer a two-way communication, which I think is a really great development that these have come up with, to be able to check in with that person and say, hey, like, what's going on with you? What type of help do you need? What is your situation? They also have, some of them have integrated GPS, as well as that 24/7 monitoring and that call button. So that person knows that if they do need help, it really is just that button away. And for caregivers, we know that sometimes that button away doesn't always have to connect directly to us, that there are trained people that have that sort of 24/7 element. They've got the time and systems in place for that. And so in the chat, we have the comment of, if given such peace of mind. And that can be sort of the value that they bring to let us know that, okay, even if I'm not there, there would be someone there for my loved one if something were to happen. And so these subscription fees, again, are for the higher end version, ones that don't have the two-way communication, and they don't have all of the features listed on the screen. They can be, the TELUS one is $15 a month for the lower service option. So Philips Lifeline can be $36, Life Assure can be $30. And so sometimes those can be a little bit more reasonable within your own budget and just still give you that quality sense of peace of mind. These are usually fairly easy to set up within someone's home or within their apartment. I do know that sometimes making sure that when you set them up, if there is an apartment, making sure that there's extreme clarity on what the building processes would be if someone needed to get in, and to make sure that you know within that building sort of if there's a code that emergency responders would need to get into the front door, because your loved one probably can't buzz them in. Are there any thoughts, comments, or questions about personal emergency response systems? And thank you in the chat for sharing your experience using one. It's great to hear sort of how they work in different people's situations and on different caregiver journeys. And so we're going to take yet another step into the technology of things. And so PERS have been around for quite a while, and they have a very clear purpose. So I'm now going to be talking about smart home systems. And these are products that some of us may have, or you've definitely seen lots of different ads for them, but they're not specifically designed for caregivers, but they can offer quite a number of benefits. So I'm presenting information on Amazon Alexa, Google Nest Home, and Apple HomePods, pardon me. And all of these have slightly different features, but the majority of them have the same principles, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm just going to first highlight some of the differences that they have. Obviously, if you have Apple products, then Apple HomePods might be more familiar to use. It does integrate with an iPhone, but you can also get an app if you have an Android. It utilizes Siri and can act as an intercom system, which can be helpful to communicate within a home or between different homes. Amazon Alexa and Google Nest Home both have display screens, which can be really helpful to give someone a visual. So you can do video calls right on the system. It can sometimes act as that day clock if you have it set up to have that time and date displayed for your loved one. Google works with Hey Google, and you can ask any of those questions that we might think of. What's the weather? What's my schedule today? What day is it today? What time is it? With Amazon Alexa, Amazon again has that display screen. And in 2021, they launched Alexa Together. And so this is a system that basically incorporates a personal response system, so that PERS that we just talked about in the last slide, with a smart home system. So provides a level of 24/7 urgent response and activity notifications. And so those are some of the differences involved with smart home systems. Broadly speaking, all of them have these basic components. So based on how much you want to get into them or how much you want to utilize them, you can connect to different lighting. Often this is through smart plugs or smart devices. You can connect them to video doorbells. So using a system like Ring might give you eyes outside the home, and that's maybe something you're more comfortable with, to be able to monitor and see, okay, so and so left the house at this time. Well, that's not normal for them, and that's gonna be the prompt that I need to either give them a call or call the neighbor and just make sure that things are all right. It can also help you to automatically lock doors, or you can set up verbal reminders. And so this might be where you use this sort of a system to help you with that medication reminder and have the smart home system say, hey, it's 8 a.m., it's time to take the pills located next to the napkin holder, or whatever cue is going to be most relevant to the person that you're supporting. There's also various smart home thermostats, and some of these can be integrated in with the sensors that I showed on some earlier slides, all in a way to help to provide a space that helps that person feel safe and that helps you know that your loved one is secure in their home. On the Amazon Alexa and the Google Nest Home, as I showed you, they have that display screen, and that can allow for video calls through it. All the systems also do allow for audio calls through the device. And sometimes you see those commercials where they're very cute, and Alexa sets up different reminders or helps someone engage with music. And all of those are just little ways that you can utilize these systems to help to better support someone's independence or better keep someone stimulated, especially if someone is living independently and they're not getting a lot of stimulation because certain programming is closed, to make sure that their house is a place where they can feel active and engaged. Are there any questions about smart home systems?
Yes.
Yes.
I have a question. If someone live in a building that has sort of like a lifeline system, would all these smart home system interfere the existing system installed in the building?
So if there is physical, I'm assuming these are physical like pull lines,
Uh,
like in sort of sometimes
mm,
if they're in the washrooms where there's sort of just like an emergency pull, or
they
is it
they wear a pendant.
okay? The pendants, the technology shouldn't interfere with each other. If
Yeah.
it's sort of a facility that has certain services, it could be a good idea just to check. But if someone has the PERS system, so the personal response system, and they've got that pendant or that false detection, you could still benefit from sort of utilizing different smart home features to give sort of extra um, options and extra tools as far as being able to make sure that yeah, the lights are being turned off at a certain time of day to help someone calm down in the evening, or to make sure lights are turned on so that your little one isn't sort of quote unquote walking around in the dark.
Now, this kind of system, you recommend that they supposed to discuss with the building to find out, see whether there would be like any interaction. And other question is like the interaction, like the interaction is just only in English? Is there any other language?
That's a very good question. I would assume that you could program Alexa to speak a different language.
Oh, so it's up to the users to program it.
It might be just a setting. This
Setting.
Amazon Alexa speaks English, Spanish, French, German, Italian, Hindi, Japanese, and Portuguese.
Oh, no Chinese.
I'm reading more of the article. There might be. There's different versions of Amazon Alexa. I would very much expect them to be able to speak other languages. And so that would be something I would look into. And I think that's a great point to make sure that systems are really working for your loved one. And it can be really
So,
helpful for those distant caregivers.
so it's a robotic type of interaction. So it's not real person interaction.
So with the smart home systems, it is not a person. It is sort of, hey Siri, hey Google. With the personal response systems, that is where you often get a live. So in these systems, this is often where you get a live support team that is calling
Okay.
saying, hey, we think we've
Mhm.
detected a fall.
Right. So this is the live person that I know of, but I'm talking about the system that you just introduced.
Yeah, so the smart home systems.
Yeah.
So yeah, at that point, that is a robot.
Okay.
It is an artificially intelligent robot, so they're getting better. But that's like when you ask Google, "Hey Google, what's the weather today?" and it tells
Mhm.
you, it repeats back to you. But I would imagine that you could get that in a different language.
So that will be like the service provider and the user's interaction, but then like the family, like cannot interact with the client, I mean the user with the system, right?
So certain systems will allow for an integration, usually through an app. So you would
Okay.
get like on the Apple Home Pods, you can have multiple Home Pods registered through your device. And so
Uh-huh.
you could have your own Home Pods, but you could also have the Home Pods in someone else's home and be able to use the intercom feature and be able to use your voice to say, "Hey," on the little speakers saying, "Hey,
Uh-huh.
just this update," or being able to control the smart home system. So you would, on your end through the app, you would be able to turn on the lights, or you would be able to start the radio.
Mm. So it would not like help you to monitor, say, so if someone forgot to turn off the stove, and it would not help to avoid the burning stove, or forgetting to turn off the tap and causing all the leaking everywhere.
Yeah, and that's where something like this can be a little bit, might be more appropriate. And this is why I presented so many, because based on what your specific needs are, there is going to be different options. Every caregiving journey is unique. So this version does have sort of those monitors that if it detects water on the floor because the
Oh,
tap wasn't turned off,
yeah.
you get an alert, and either that means you can call, or you can call the neighbor and say, "Hey, go over," or just call the loved one and say, "Hey, I think the tap is on."
Oh,
Or they can be on the stove to detect, like, is something getting too hot, or has
oh,
something been on for like more than the set amount of time, or the sort of safe amount of time, and then it can send an alert. So
okay.
they can't turn the taps off for you, but
Oh,
it can it can give you, the only one that can turn the taps off if there's flooding would be this type of a sensor. So the moan, however you pronounce that brand, this one can be connected to the water supply, and if it detects a flood, then it can turn off the water system sort
oh,
of from the source. You just have to make sure it's hooked up. And I am not the person who can hook up that. I don't think you need a plumber, but because they sell them at Canadian Tire or Home Depot. But that would be a system that could turn off the water supply if it detected flooding.
oh, so, but this is not part of the smart home system, right?
It
It's
is
something different.
yeah, it is an app, and I don't know at what point they're all going to be integrated. And
Oh.
the idea of taking on this much technology can feel overwhelming. So I would recommend maybe picking like one thing from today. You get the slides, you get the links, so you will be able to maybe work through them.
Uh-huh.
Because yeah, it's all about finding what's going to work for you in your caregiving journey with your loved one.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I live in an apartment building,
Mm-hmm.
and for security reasons, I have the regular lock, which the landlord has a key to that. But
Mm-hmm.
I also have a deadbolt and a chain. And the other day, I had a fall in the bathroom, and I was just thinking about the situation. How do I inform anyone if I don't have the phone close by? And I'm wondering if there is some sort of a device that I can put there that if I could call someone, they can unlock it, but I need that chain and bolt to sleep well, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I could put something else so that an intruder couldn't come in.
Yes. So this is one option. And again, I didn't include this because I didn't want to overwhelm it, but this might be something that could provide it. So this is something that this is a deadlock or a deadbolt that can be coded. So you can either utilize a key or you can utilize a code system. And so this might be something to put on a door that way you could share that code if needed, or if this was on your loved one's home, you would make sure that that information would be recorded within the personal response system, so that if someone needed to get into your loved one's home, they don't have to break down the door, they can just utilize that code, or sometimes there's an app that you can just unlock it from your phone.
Oh, you could include that
I will add this link to the PowerPoint giant list of references.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, some food for thought. You can think about that, see if that would work for you. I don't know the prices because I didn't research this one as much, but it seems like there's lots of options. So I'd imagine there's a range of prices.
Okay.
Okay, so
Thank you.
I just want to say that while we were chatting, I Googled whether or not the Alexa could speak Chinese. It does not, but
Darn.
apparently there's an Amazon Echo product that does. And that's all I wanted to say.
That's great. Thank you. And yeah, this is where we find things and we find what's going to work for us. But yeah, thank you for looking that up.
You know, for the door things, that is what we have.
Oh,
On
cool.
the,
And how's
with
that?
the numbers.
Yeah.
With the numbers, where my family can, like my daughter can just come in, press those numbers and walk in.
Nice. And so you found that's been helpful to not have to give keys to everyone?
It is very helpful, even for me.
I would agree. I'm very bad at having keys on me. Okay, so that's great. Thank you for sharing that experience. And I
So
will
that is,
add those.
that is the digital lock, right?
Yes. And so I'm going to bring up that picture again.
Mhm.
And I will research and provide a reasonable price list and also one that's available in Canada. And again, all sorts of, not to say every problem you have, there's a tech answer. And before, because I know a couple people have appointments, so I just want to make sure I get through the last of my slides, which is just letting you know about the Scarborough Center for the Community. So if you want to come hang out with me more, and this is where if you have any specific questions about the Caregiver Wellness Program, I'd be happy to answer them. You can learn more about our program on the website listed on screen now. If you're interested in registering for our program and getting connected with a social worker, and assuming you live in the Scarborough area, looking to get connected with a social worker or just getting some more one-on-one education, you can call the number or email the email on screen now. If you're interested in learning more about the Scarborough Center for the Community, you can also follow us on social media. And this is just proof that we'll be getting a very long list of hyperlinks with all the different things that I mentioned, all the different products that I referenced today. And here's just a list of references that I spoke about to help me create the content for today's presentation.